GroundUp is a podcast for mold breakers,
risk takers,
hustlers,
and trailblazers. We're going to be telling the stories of exceptional and entrepreneurial people on the stories that define their lives.
It's those fuck it moments
when they took that leap of faith.
The people that wear both their failures and successes on their sleeves.
It's a raw and unfiltered narrative.
It's both the good and the bad of building a movement from the ground up.
Tune in, GroundUp. What's up, guys? This is the first episode of GroundUp. It's here. This is what you guys have all been waiting for. I'm your host. My name is Abby Titcomb. I'm a self-proclaimed techie entrepreneur. I'm in VC right now. I'm an associate at _VC. I founded a company called Nightly, which was data analytics for police departments. I love all things tech. I love all things blockchain. I love all things that are nerdy and amazing. I kind of describe myself as a self-proclaimed problem solver because I love solving problems, and I think that that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So now that you know a little bit about me, I kind of want to introduce you guys to the two guys I have at my table right now, Jordan and Casson. They're going to be joining me every episode to talk to really awesome people about the moments that have defined their lives. So let's give them a little time to introduce themselves. Jordan.
Thanks, Abs. My name is Jordan Greenfield, and I jumped into the startup world right out of an MBA program. Jumped out of there early, got a little bit more schooling than my friend Casson to my left, but I jumped right into a biotech company, AC Therapies, right down the street here, as well as Inside Tracker across the river over in Cambridge. And I knew right away coming out of my MBA program, I never wanted to go the traditional route. I love the startup stuff. My dad was in the startup world. And I saw an opportunity with the fragmentation across the social web. I understood that people were starting to realize that there's a direct correlation between the media they're reading on the social web and the way in which they perceive the world. And so we wanted to provide a solution where they could have more control over what they're seeing. And I learned quickly when jumping into the startup world the importance of surrounding yourself with good people. And that's why I'm sitting around this table now, and I'm looking forward to this kick-ass podcast. Casson?
I love it. What's going on, guys? This is GroundUp number 1. I gotta say, I'm so excited about this team and everyone that we have sitting around this table right now. A little bit about me. I'm a founder. I'm a startup guy. I got sucked into this world completely unexpectedly. I'm a high school dropout. I've never been to college. I'm self-taught. I've had a lot of great people around me in my life to push me, drive me, and help me kind of in all these different areas that, you know, I've just never been introduced to growing up. I had worked for a rideshare company that was similar to Uber and Lyft, and, you know, it was something fulfilling in the sense where we raised a lot of money, we did a lot of great things, but I knew that I needed to kind of break into my own. So I'd founded a company called Podium, which is somewhat similar to influencer marketing, yet we focus on you, the consumer, to kind of market the brands that you care most about. So instead of, you know, talking mostly about us, I'm going to pass it back over to Abby and kind of get this show on the road. So thanks for tuning in, guys.
So you heard from the people who are going to be talking to you every episode, but I kind of want to give a quick 1-2 on what we're going to be talking about. So GroundUp is a podcast that tells the stories of exceptional and entrepreneurial people. We want to dive deeper into the stories that we hear in the regular media, go beyond the success, and dive into those failures, those moments where people were at rock bottom at the top of their success, or, you know, the moments that they just said fuck it. So you know, that's kind of what I see GroundUp being. But I think Casson and Jordan, how about you give it 2 cents on what you think GroundUp is going to bring our audience?
I'll let the jawline go first.
I love it. This guy's always giving me trouble. You know, like I kind of just touched on, I had dropped out of high school because I just knew that I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that, you know, there was something out there I needed to be doing. And I did not know it was startups. I thought it was going to be something maybe in music. And, you know, when I kind of jumped in to just trying to figure out my own life, I think that was really this moment for me of kind of understanding that I'm ready to risk, you know, whatever, you know, traditional path or anything else that I have already built up in my life to get to where I want to go. And I think it's those stories that we care so much about hearing. And, you know, I can't say that I've already succeeded or failed. I know I've failed many times, and I think we just want to hear more from people about their situation. Where are they? Are they, you know, building something that's already incredible enough, or are they kind of down in the dust, or what's happened? So Jordan, take it away here, man.
Yeah, I think it's more about talking about the real shit. I think that you see a lot of people right now, the Gary Vaynerchuk's of the world, that talk about really this motivational aspect of entrepreneurship, but you don't really see them getting vulnerable and talking about the insecurities surrounding starting a company or starting a movement from the ground up. And I'm going to go back to what I said prior to this, the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. And so what I think what this really is all about is talking about those stories, talking about the inspiration you found along the way. I know Abby and I talk a lot about this idea of trying to bottle passion and give yourself a daily dose of that so you can continue that inspiration and that feeling that you had on day one, because it is a rocky road along the way. So we want to talk about the good stuff. We want to talk about the different, we want to talk about all the different accolades people get, but then we also want to talk about the struggles people face and how you can deal with that and how you can create solutions for those problems as well.
Yeah, because I think we all agree that we get excited by the failures, right? Like we don't want to hear about the successes. Like we want to hear about like
when Abby's showing up 54 minutes late,
which I did to this first podcast. Failure number 1, right on the table. But we want to be transparent. You know what I mean? I don't believe in sugarcoating. I think with transparency comes strength. We believe in the power of vulnerability in entrepreneurship. And that's kind of what we want to talk to. So we're going to be talking to our guests about that. You know, we want to get really raw and unfiltered, you know, with these exceptional people that we're talking to and give you guys, you know, kind of like a unique narrative that hopefully you haven't heard before. But we're really excited about it. So, I want to get into kind of our first episode, right?
Let's do it.
I think before we do, though, I want to give a quick introduction to the man behind the cam, the man behind the audio, Sam Swan.
Sam,
you want to give yourself... Sam's going to be here. Sam...
He's such a legend.
Sam is a legend. Sam, let's switch roles for a sec. Grab the mic real quick. 30-second intro.
30-second intro?
Yeah.
Who's going to intro Chris?
The in the corner. Go ahead,
See
Sam.
my face right there?
Yeah.
Tap on me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm Sam. Find
Jordan
out my
should definitely
last
have your
name on
job.
your own. What's that?
Jordan should definitely have your job.
Yeah, my job's simple. Everyone, become a videographer. It's awesome. And you make millions. Endorsed. No, I'm part of the Hubu team with Jordan here. Been doing video stuff, die hard, for about 4 years. It's been awesome. If you look behind me, is my roommate Chris, an awesome guy. What's he doing? There he is.
We love them both.
Yeah, and that's pretty much all you need to know. You'll find out more later, because we'll have one of these every single podcast. Awesome.
Let's do it. Let's get to our guest.
Sam's going to be here for gentle humor and commentary, as well as making us sound good and making us look good, which we all need.
He's so gentle.
Fun fact about Sam, he
Minus
was
Castle.
a professional voiceover guy, or
So gentle.
whatever you call those things.
So let's get into our first episode here. We have a really exciting guest that I know we are all super hyped to have at the table with us today. Nick Pirollo, you're 28. He's played many different roles: entrepreneur, founder, early team member, advisor, late stage consultant, literally every stage of startups, and have done a lot. So at only 28, Nick has served as CTO of Scholly, an app for finding scholarships from conception to its current standing as a successful Shark Tank alumni. And he's also a member of the 2016 Forbes Under 30 list for social entrepreneurship. So he also helped grow the technology as a founding team member of Gradifi, as principal architect. Gradifi is a company enabling employers to show gratitude to their employees by helping reduce their student debt. This was acquired in 2016 by First Republic Bank. So that's one acquisition under your wing. At how old were you when it was acquired?
26, yeah.
26.
Yeah.
Wow.
And are we allowed to disclose how much that accusation went for?
They'd be so mad.
They'd be mad.
They'd be mad.
High millions.
High, it's just a general range.
Somewhere in the doubles below 3.
So most recently, Nick scaled the dating app Hatr that helps people find love through their common hates. I love that. So romantic.
Charming.
An advisor, an entrepreneur, and a techie at heart. We're super excited to have you here, Nick.
And a good-looking
Yeah,
guy.
thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
So first, I just want to start up with saying, what is people's like most common hates? Because like I know what mine are, but like I want to know what everybody
It's
else
like a
is.
super great conversation topic.
It is?
Gets everything started.
Is this your
Yeah.
icebreaker?
Oh yeah, it's the icebreaker.
All right.
It's exactly how.
What
it
do
works.
people hate?
What do you hate?
What do I hate? Definitely hate being put on the spot.
Well, this is the wrong podcast for you,
Yeah,
man.
this is gonna
Welcome.
be a good show. It's gonna be awesome. What do you hate, Jordan?
What do I hate? I hate not being around people that inspire me. That's what I hate.
Love that.
What a great answer.
How about you, Casson from Fasten?
Oh, it's a big one. There, there's,
He hates
it's,
that.
It's a long list.
Hates
I
that.
hate that name. Well, we'll leave it at that. And Abby,
What do I hate?
what do you hate the most?
Are you serious? That was the most bullshit answer ever. I hate asparagus, all right? I hate asparagus and celery, and I know that they're both vegetables, but I just really don't like them. So much that I take the celery out of my Bloody Mary. So
And you love Bloody Marys, we know this.
I love Bloody Marys. All right, well, glad we all got to know each other.
That was bonding moment.
Bonding moment for all of us.
Yeah, I remember
Nick. Nick. You have such a great story. I'm really excited for you to tell everything that we've talked about to our audience. I really want you to give a quick background on kind of what you're doing now. Give yourself an own intro because I can't intro you.
Yeah, so right now I'm at Gradifi. After the acquisition, we've kind of just been building the product, trying to expand, really focusing on kind of making it, the best HR benefit app that's out there. And other than that, I'm an advisor and a mentor for many startups, trying to help people who aren't technical kind of navigate those waters and make sure they aren't getting screwed, as so many times happens when you're outsourcing things or trying to put those things together, which is like something I'm actually pretty passionate about, just making sure that people who aren't technical can kind of like still get there.
How has the role been transitioning from like a founder to an advisor? Because I feel like an advisor is a really interesting role, right?
Yeah, it's different. So like it's the same thing kind of becoming a consultant from a founder, and even kind of we can get into it later with Scholly when I transitioned into that role. It's just like being able to kind of stand back and be like you have to trust them to kind of run things too, and you have to try and trust their vision and kind of like not always put yourself into all of their problems, right?
Like an objective standpoint on these companies' problems.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's really cool. I think that you have so much experience and at such a young age. Like 3 companies, Scholly, Gradifi, and Hatr, and you're only 28, which is unbelievable. So take it back. Like, what was the Kickstarter? What was the Firestarter? What was that inflection point that kind of got you on this path? Because not a lot of people go down this path. Like, there has to be a lot of things that happen,
Yeah, and I think that we chatted about it briefly. There's multiple points that kind of led me to exactly where I am today, and I think that really each of those kind of defined a different period of my life, and kind of what brought me this direction. So kind of starting when I was younger, I was always encouraged to have a strong sense of self. My mom always taught me just keep working hard, always do your best, kind of always be trustworthy. And then once I was in high school, my dad who was early in tech. He was self-taught. He worked for SAP, and they had done a cutback, and so he lost his job. And I learned then that he was kind of like, I saw him do whatever he had to do to provide for us, even if it wasn't in his space, even if it was working at Wawa or doing this or that, until he could find an actual get back into his way, and really worked his way and to find a way to make that work, and that really resonated with me and kind of put me on a path to kind of be really driven to kind of make my own way in life.
Dive deep into this. I think that I'm a big proponent that like our family crafts who we are. If you ever met my family, you'd see 6 really loud people,
Late people
who don't stop talking. And I think it's really interesting because that environment crafts who you are, So do you feel like that environment of being with your father and your mother, what environment that they helped you through and grew you through, turned you into the entrepreneur you are today? Or do you think it put you in the right mindset? You know what I mean?
I think it's a mixture of both. I mean, I think I'm also a strong proponent that you derive a lot of your personality and things like that from your family. I mean, growing up, and if you go with like the 5 people that you're around the most type thing, like you're with them the most. They're kind of building you into the human that you are, right? And so you take a lot of experiences and lessons from them, whether you plan to or not. I think that like that sense of honesty, loyalty, and stuff came from my mom, and really kind of like always trying to do the best by people that you're with and around, no matter what they can do for you, is like something that I kind of derived from all of that. And then on the other side, just kind of like it's like never being too proud, but always putting on a strong face is kind of what I derived from a lot of that time back then. And it's something I didn't really realize until I looked back on it years later, that was kind of a pivotal moment for me.
I feel like that's what happens with your parents, right? You don't know
appreciate
how
it.
much that they've affected you until you look back 5 years later and you're like, oh my God, how was I graced with their presence?
Yeah. And even now they're super supportive, and it's really great. It kind of helps me get through everything, and I kind of still do it for them because they provided for me, right?
Yeah.
So I have a question. So outside of your parents, I mean, since I've been in this entrepreneurial world, there have been certain people that have come into my life that have made a substantial impact on me. We had a conversation just last night about the role Matthew Grace has played in my life when coming in and giving me a whole new perspective on this startup world and a whole new mindset. And I made the comparison of me and Casson as non-technical co-founders being more passion driven. Where he came in with a more logical outlook on what we're doing. Have there been people that have made substantial impacts that have come in out of unexpected places that have given you a sense of purpose or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely has been. There's quite a few I could name, and some that I'd probably have glanced over that have helped me that like would be hard to remember now, but there's always people along the way, and I think any entrepreneur who tells you they've done it all alone is like completely bullshitting you.
Totally,
right?
100%.
Like if it's like I'm self-made, that's not a thing, to be honest. I mean, you're built by the people around you, right? I think that as we kind of continue through, a few of them will come up into play. I think the most recent one that I think you guys know about and have met is Joe. I mean, Joe Finsterwald, the CTO of Gradifi. Yep. I mean, he was super big in enabling me to kind of like go out there and just kind of get it, right? When we worked together at Vistaprint, he like really gave me my opportunity to kind of grow and become a leader. So, I mean, I would say that was like in terms of,
So let's talk about how that background, that childhood, that environment that you were brought up in, right, translated to when you started actually getting on that entrepreneurial path, right? So what was that story? What happened? What did you start? What did you do that kind of got you on that path? Because it's not an easy path to get on, right? It's something that you have to search for.
Yeah, and it's something that I don't think I fully knew I wanted. I mean, I went to Drexel. I mean, I grew up always knowing I was going to go to college. College what I was supposed to do. My parents weren't as fortunate to be able to go until later in life. Yeah. And when I decided to go to Drexel, I was going to be an electrical computer engineer. I was going to build the hardware. I was going to do all of that stuff, and I was super into it. I found out I hated math, but like I stuck with it, and I was like, I have to do this because it's like what I'm supposed to do. And as kind of I went through that, I started to kind of see that like there was other things that you could do with your life besides follow that path. And I think I knew that. It was just more about kind of going through that self-discovery to be like, is this for me or not? And like I think that it's always super important to not knock something until you try it, right? Drexel gave me a lot of chances to do that with the co-op program, things like that.
A co-op program, yeah.
So I got into the workplace, and I stayed with one company for a long time, and I think I found my like niche kind of in the software stuff, even though I was doing hardware. By kind of like all of a sudden I would do something like an Excel macro or something, and it would be like, oh, like I actually had more fulfillment doing that than I did with like actually designing the radios and things like that. Yeah. So like that kind of got me into that mindset of like you can kind of explore other things no matter what you do now, right? And you can kind of transform. So like towards my junior year at Drexel, I decided that I was super into apps development, software, all of that stuff, and at the time, everyone always had PCs, and then I realized if I was going to be an app developer, I needed a Mac. So it was that term when I was kind of going in and looking at everything I needed to do to kind of get into school. that I was like, I'm gonna actually just add money to my student loans, kind of really like go for this. I'll deal with paying it later, and went and got my first MacBook so I could learn how to do iOS development.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's just ditching the safety net completely, right?
Yeah, that's like completely thrown out the window. Right?
Figure it out later. Oh well.
Isn't that scary though?
Which is the theme
I was
here.
19 years old, and I was just like, well, fuck it, we'll find it out.
Well, because also, I think that this is important. Your parents hadn't gone to college, right?
Mm-mm.
So your parents I know my parents did. My parents were the same way. My mom didn't go to college until she was like 30. My dad went to music school, which is college, but like, you know what I mean? And he was a musician. But it's like, the degree is like the most important thing to parents who have not gone to college. Mm-hmm. So how did it feel kind of straying from the norm, adding money to your college student loan, and like having them be like, I
think the tougher part was like they worked super hard to get to where they were to be able to co-sign for my loans, right? And like I kind of slipped this thing in there and said like, you guys are kind of responsible for this too, but I'll make it right? Yeah. So like it's kind of like.
Did you have a conversation about it with them?
No. Yeah, I was like, I just kind of need this, and like they put it onto the thing, but I figured it out. They found out later. They're like, that's a really shiny MacBook you have, Nick. How did you get that?
And now they don't question it.
Yeah. No. Now they're like, yeah, whatever. Thanks.
Cass, you got something, big man?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, do you think, ditching that safety net is a necessity for growing and starting, down your own path? Or do you think you need to stay and play it a little safer and say, you know what, like, I'm not gonna stress myself too financially. I'm gonna eat, just ramen, peanut butter and jellies.
I mean, I did that anyway. You know what I mean?
Right. I think when it comes to that stuff, like at some point you do have to do it and kind of take the jump. I think there's different points in your life where you do different things, right? And I mean, I've had many times over the course of doing all of this where sometimes the safety net is there and it's pretty obvious you can do both things, and sometimes you don't have a choice and you kind of have to put yourself 100% in and kind of go for it, right? There's inflection points in every startup as well too, where like it can go from idea to implementation, and you can only go so far without being 100% behind what you're doing.
Right. It could also go down, from idea to trash. And I think that's as a founder, that's every founder's worst nightmare. And while you're sitting there and you're pouring your heart and soul on top of the financial strain that really comes along with that, were you sitting there almost in that mindset of being like, this may never happen, I may never, get to where I want to be. Yeah. And it feels like that's just forever. That's a never-ending thing.
And right? I guess it's like a super bleak thing to kind of ask someone who is thinking back and looking at being like 19 years old and be like, oh, never.
You were 19.
Yeah, something's like not going to happen for me. I think like I knew that I had like the degree to fall back on, even though I'd have to figure out how to pay that $210,000 off or something.
That's a big debt to have on your shoulder.
I was just gonna say, because it was an interesting question to ask Nick, because us as non-technical co-founders, I think that.
Hey, I'm an engineer.
You're an engineer too, so that's why I was pointing at Jawline. So for Nick though, I think that there's a point to be told. You definitely have some insight for non-technical co-founders, because when we're sitting here being like we're taking a leap of faith, Nick's sitting there being like, oh, I can build that.
Right,
I can go and build that.
And we're sitting here, we have an idea, but we don't, have the understanding.
And so we have to sell the story, then we have to raise money, then we have to find a team to build it. In your eyes, you can sit there and build it. So what would be your advice to a non-technical co-founder?
Well, I think with that though too, there's many ways to think about that, and it's like everyone has different skill sets, and like definitely anything that I've learned, and it's not holistic, is like. There's people around you that you need to surround yourself with no matter what, or how good you think you are at anything. When it comes to that, it's more about for the non-technical co-founders, it's about kind of being able to learn how to read people, kind of trust your instincts. And I think that people who are usually non-technical, it's a lot of their skill set. I mean, I think Cass and Jordan, you guys are like, and not to say that you're not, Abby, but like speaking out to
love.
You're an engineer, right? So like in terms of the non-technical, being able to kind of read that, right? I was gonna do biomed. But is being able to read those people and then figure out how to find people that you trust that can vet people for you, right? Right. And I think Casson and I have been through that a few times, and I've done. It's pretty much a lot of what I do is like being a trusted advisor, right? Yeah. That's like pretty much what a CTO ends up being for people. So being a CTO for hire is kind of the same thing. And I think that kind of comes back into kind of after I took that step with that laptop, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, so you took that step with the laptop, right?
Yeah.
You did this, you went there. What happened from there?
Yeah,
What came
so
next?
I had thought I had this brilliant idea, and I had a few people. I think you actually met Sal. You've heard of him a few times. He was a
he's in
graphics designer.
LA.
He's in
He
LA
works
now.
for big-
Worked on Star Wars, actually.
Big movies, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't melt.
Please don't melt. You can meet him one day.
shit, I'm gonna start crying.
Yeah, he left to
Good-looking
do
guy,
to do VFX and stuff for Bad Robot, and like so. But at the time, we were working together, and like he has the same drive as me. He's out there. He's a go get it. He's non-technical at all, and he just has that drive. Like he carried coffee for J.J. Abrams until he could get his way up to be a VFX when he had the opportunity and just looked for that constantly. So we worked together, and he was kind of driving me to be like, no, you want to do this, you can do it, you can learn. And we started this hashtag optimization app where you could enter.
What
like,
a catchy hashtag.
yeah. So you could enter.
Can we borrow that software for who?
Yeah, I have it. I told you about this before. I still have it. So you'd enter your hashtag. It was always crawling Instagram and finding hashtags that were seen with that hashtag to kind of give you the ones that are most seen and most liked.
We'll take that.
Yeah, it's all yours. But yeah, so like, so I went through that, and I actually had pitched. It was the first year Dorm Room Fund was around. They had made no investments yet, and I pitched Dorm Room Fund on this idea, and they were super interested. Actually, they actually offered me a deal, but this is exactly comes back to the non-technical co-founder thing. So Chris Gray, who's the CEO of Scholly now, and was then, I guess, but came to me and was like, hey, I have this idea. I see your drive. I see what you've been doing. You have the skills that I kind of need. Like, we should actually talk about this thing I have called Scholly. And I guess it's another point of, I guess, inflection or taking that leap where I was like, I had this idea that someone was going to give me $20K to kind of go with.
Well, it was also your idea.
Yeah,
like,
and it was mine too.
Yeah, what made you change? Kind of what made you not jump ship? It wasn't jumping ship, but it was like jumping onto another ship.
Yeah, exactly. And so like it was weird to have someone like I guess I don't even think about it until later on that someone offered me $20K, and I was like, yeah, how about not going to do that? Like, sorry.
How old
like,
are you at this point?
I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And with all these student debt, those loans I just took out, that laptop I had bought like 6 months ago, like all that stuff, and I was just like, I didn't think twice because I believed in his vision and kind of what he was selling. And I think like for me, it really resonated because it was an app to find college scholarships, and really for me, I see that like I didn't know at the time that there were so many out there and so many people could get them, and like I was like white middle class. I didn't know I could even get anything. I was always like, you're not supposed to. It's for minorities, this, that, and the other thing. It's like the thing is, there's opportunity for all, which is Scholly's slogan to this day.
Yeah.
And
did
like,
you come up with that one?
I didn't. I wish I did. But it really resonated with me that like just because I didn't know and I didn't try, it was stuck with all this debt, and you could stop other people from being there across all income levels, all brackets, all race, nationality, location, everything, right? And it was just about how hard you worked and how much you wanted to do it, but we could make that easier for them, right? And that's like between that, like that story, and then Chris's brand himself being the $1 Million Scholar, really going out, getting $1 million in scholarships for college.
that was his story.
Yeah, that was his story.
Wow.
And being from Birmingham, just working hard, going to the library, finding these things and saying, I can take his vision and what he did and turn that into an app that people can use to skip all of that trouble, and kind of like make it easier for them to find those things.
Can I ask you, what do you think he saw in you?
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I wish I had asked him that question. I guess I still could. I just never really think about it when we're on the phone together. I think it was the drive. I think it was that I was super passionate about this thing that I had just started, and I was going to do whatever it took to kind of go with it, right? Like I was going to keep following it, and I was going to do it. And I think it was kind of, and a lot of it always becomes down to serendipity, right? It's like right place, right time. That's just a lot of the world, and I'm never going to say that like I'm different than any other engineer he might have met, right? I think we got along a lot better in the long run and things like that, but like I think it was more of like I happened to pitch him and he happened to have the need at the time. Like 6 months later, he would have been going already, and I think it's just about kind of jiving in the moment, and like it kind of lines up, right?
Well, I think, the whole idea of right place, right time, and the luck factor of some of these things is just so, like...
It's glossed over a lot.
Yeah, it's glossed over because the whole point about right place, right time is you put yourself in that place. and you put yourself in that place.
I
at
love
that. Time.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
put
I mean,
yourself in
you're
that
right
place.
there.
You have to
Right
create
there,
those
yeah.
opportunities for yourself, and you have to be able to put yourself in those rooms and put yourself in
And
those situations and be
capitalize.
and be
Right.
confident doing it. So like it's about
Being
putting
able to
yourself
talk
there,
to
but
people, yeah.
and a lot of times though it is just luck, and it's just like, oh, like I did this is a lot of times not always. I don't think that's always a fair answer, right?
Right.
But yeah, so like it is about the exact same thing. I think.
Yeah, it's putting yourself right there.
Yeah, I was pitching a fund of like kids that were my peers, like right, like so like I went into that room and I'm not really. I mean, well, even when you met me, I was a little more socially awkward than I am now, and like that wasn't my comfort zone, right? So I put myself out of that to kind of get in there to try and do something I cared about.
Yeah.
So speaking of comfort zones, we've got 3 others sitting around the table right now. When you're in the entrepreneurial world, Forbes 30 under 30, that's like a staple. That's something people aspire to be, and something I think the 3 of us would sell our soul to do. For you, coming from a middle-class family who may not have known exactly what path they wanted to go down, and after all that hard work and after taking out the loans and getting rid of that safety net, what is a moment like that for you in terms of validating it?
I mean, I think that's just validating the hard work, and I think that it's like it's something you look at and you're like, I don't know, like I don't always know how to really talk about that, right? Like I'm also not good at taking praise, I guess, but like for me it was like looking at it and being like, oh, people care about what I'm doing, and like when you're doing something that's B2C and consumer focused and like you have a goal and a vision, and you're founding it, you're not always in the weeds, right? Like I'm doing this, people are paying for it, but is it actually helping people? And like they go through a lot of trouble to figure that out for you to be able to put you on that for social entrepreneurship, right? So like you're having impact and you're making a change in the world that's positive, and like for me it resonated that I was actually doing what I was saying I wanted to do, right? Like I wasn't ever going to be able, well, maybe one day, but at the time I wasn't going to put myself out on the ground and be finding out and talking to people, right? The most we could ever do maybe was a marketing campaign, right? With like people that had won scholarships, but like this was just kind of validation that I was actually helping people, right?
How did you, so you started this, right? So bringing it back to that pitch where you decided to take the leap and go with Scholly, right? What happened after that? You know, where did it take you? Because I feel like that was one of your inflection points. Right?
Yeah, and so all 3 of us, there was myself, Bryson, Aleph, and Chris Gray, 2 of us were technical co-founders, and like we were all in school, so like we just kind of worked through it. And
what year were you? You were a...
this was my senior year, yeah.
Gotcha.
So, and it was Chris's junior year. He still had a little while to go.
Oh, he was a junior.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we pushed it out. We went through with it. We didn't really know anything. I mean, I didn't know how to price a product. I didn't know what a product should look like. I had no concept of UI UX. Like I just did kind of what thought looked right. If you ever Google Scholly and go look at the weird spiral notebook UI we had, it was horrible. Someone on Fiverr actually offered to donate us a new UI because they thought it was so terrible.
Yikes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's gone now though. Yeah, so we went through that and we just did it and we put it out there. And
Wait, what goes into we just did it?
Yeah, so like, I mean,
because everybody says that, but I want to know what goes into we just did it.
I meant we just did it as in like we put aside the fact that we didn't really know anything. We knew what Chris did. We had his process. We kind of had an idea of what we thought we would want in the app. So we put it together. I mean, Bryson and I did a lot of...
you created a solution for yourself, which I think is an understated thing. When you're creating, you were saying before that you were your target market.
I believed in it.
You were your target market as well, though. So you had an understanding of what people on the other end might be looking for.
Yeah.
So you're creating it, but you had an idea of what the solution people are looking for.
Yeah, that's true. And I think even at the time and even now, obviously, because I just glazed over that, is like you didn't think like that, right?
Yeah.
So like I was like, I'm doing this. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'm just going to do it because this is what I would think I would need. And like thinking back, like, oh yeah, my target segment, and I believed in it. So like that's why it ended up maybe coming out a little better than it would have otherwise. And once we put it together, we just started to figure out business from there. I mean, we didn't even have an LLC at the time when we launched or anything. Like we were just some guys who said like, we're going to do this. And so, yeah, we put it all together. Dorm Room Fund helped with a lot of that like legal stuff and figuring that out. And we kind of put it together, put it in the App Store, and it started to work. Like, we didn't really know what to do with it once we put it out.
Yeah, what did you do? You put it in the app store. Did you test it with people? Because I love this, because this is what I did with Nightly, right? I couldn't code my own app, so I outsourced it. And I managed a Ukrainian team of developers, and I built an app, and then I baited it with like 300 people. So like going through the test flight store, right? And launching it and creating
Before
the Google form.
Before Apple bought it.
Yes, exactly. Before you understand like, so you understand how to use the app, and so I can get your email. Like, how did you actually start growing the business? Meaning, you just put it in the app store. Did people just start downloading it,
like
or
none
what
of you
did
guys
you
have
do?
marketing or sales backgrounds.
And so, exactly, especially at the time. I think there's a few things there, and I think a lot of that was actually, even if we didn't realize at the time, was leveraging networks that we didn't know we had built. Right.
I love that. Yes, that's great.
Chris. And to his credit to this day, has a really strong network. I mean, Gates Millennial Scholar, Coca-Cola Scholar. He really put a lot of that network to use, which a lot of people wouldn't think to do. That you could go ask someone to give you a scholarship to like, can you tweet about this thing? Can you like tell us like, or what do you think about it? You give out scholarships. Like, does this help you market? Like, what do we do? And like from there, we kind of derived a lot of where the business would go. Drexel helped a lot too. Even though I gave them a ton of money over the years, I guess I kind of
that's probably why, right?
I kind of earned that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, they helped us out a lot. They were founding their entrepreneurship school at the time. And
do they have a plaque for you yet, or what?
No, I wish. That'd be pretty dope. Buildings cost like $100 million at Drexel. If you want your name on it, I'll get there.
Give them 20.
Yeah.
5.
I'll just build another Comcast center. But so they kind of helped us out. They connected us with the right people, especially locally. And then we kind of went through, like they eventually, while they were growing that out, they had an incubator called the Bayada Center. The producers of Shark Tank actually came to Philly looking for startups that were student run. And they asked Drexel specifically if they had anyone. Like, oh, by the way, our first company that was ever founded is called Scholly. Like, you do want to talk to them?
Again, another universe
so
conspiring situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
but
so
you put yourself in that place, in that scenario at that time.
And to stay around
and
and
that's what they're talking about.
and like to not, I guess, and even then to not drop out of school. And like for us, I think at the time we were making probably like $45,000-$50,000 a month. Like that's a ton of money at that age, right? Or like that time when you're still in school.
Drinking $2 beers, you're making.
I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was $2 beers.
What were you eating at that time? Still sticking straight to the smaller meals, or were you
smaller meals. You mean the ramen,
the
peanut butter?
That was actually.
It doesn't eat.
And the natty light, right?
I had a separate story that we can do that another time. That was my bodybuilding phase. So it was plain rice and plain chicken.
Weighing out your meals.
Yeah, I did that. That was an interesting time. It kept me. That was a lot of discipline. I learned a lot of discipline from that, actually.
That's good though. Everyone needs some good discipline.
Shark Tank, though.
Yeah.
So Shark Tank came to Drexel and it was like, we're looking for student startups. What happened from there?
Oh yeah, so Drexel recommended us as they were like, oh, there's this company that's like the first one that's kind of come out of our entrepreneurship school. Yeah. True or not, I guess it was made before that, but and they went through the whole process, interviewed us. Chris had a video made by a local student-run production company in Philly that actually runs out of Penn still. Had a video made, kind of like our pitch video, put it all together. We sent it out. We waited to hear back. Went through the whole thing. I was actually out in Arizona working when we actually had the pitch, and Chris had did the whole thing where like they call you and they're like in the tank and he's like, this is what our thing is, and we did all that. But yeah, that whole process was super interesting. I don't even know how much I'll talk about the process, but
can we talk about just one thing real quick, because I think this is important. So when I first had met you, this was years ago. This is before Scholly was on Shark Tank. You were here in Boston.
Yeah.
Right? So you did take, I don't want to say a gap or step away from Scholly, but at that point you were at Vistaprint.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think that loops back exactly to the stuff that you talked about before, right?
Of having to kind of
pull back, not always follow
Yeah.
it directly. Like, what do you do? Chris was in school still.
You
Like
pay bills, yeah.
and he had all the scholarships. He wasn't going to pull out and leave, right? He had to finish, and like he wanted to, right? He was first generation graduate. Like, it was a
Right.
thing for him.
Oh, and I mean,
And,
that's,
yeah,
as you
and
should
for
if
sure.
you get over,
And so Bryson and I kind of thought, like, what do we have to do to kind of be sustained while this is happening? Because like we
yourself,
can't
yeah.
raise while he's still there. He'd have to leave, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up taking a job at Vistaprint, moving to Boston, and that's kind of one where I met Joe. I mean, I put hard work in. Like, I worked a lot while I was there, and but he saw that and was like, hey, like, you should come over to my team. Did that, and he elevated me eventually to being a team leader after a year and a half.
Right.
At 23 years old, I was running teams over there, and that was a whole nother interesting experience because it was such a huge company, and I was like this startup where I can do whatever I want, and I was kind of taking meetings in conference rooms for Scholly sometimes, like about
going
like
back
this
and
and the
forth,
other
yeah.
thing.
I
And,
love that. Yeah.
and I'd go back out into this world where we were making $2 billion a year, and the project I was working on specifically touched 800 million of that, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, it was super interesting to have that huge difference and see, like, here I'm super fulfilled. There's so much stuff going on. This is what I'm making impact to this business. And they were empowering me. Vistaprint's really great at doing that with engineers. And so, like, when I took from that and then we look at Scholly and be like, I can do whatever I want here. Like, it's my thing. Like, I have control over this fully, and this is, like, what I can do. It was so
freedom,
stark.
yeah.
And it was such a stark contrast, and it was weird because I was actually super comfortable with both of them at the time, right? And I don't think everywhere I would have been, but they really enabled you to kind of do your own thing. I think that's why they end up having a lot of turnover. I mean, DraftKings came out of there, right?
Yeah.
So, like, they have a lot of turnover from people who come in, do their good work, and say, like, okay, like, thank you, but I'm going to go do my thing. But they look for people like that. They
Right.
want the drive.
I mean, that's a culture.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Well, what I think is important here, right? You know, for anyone listening that is like trying to understand, like, you know, how do these things happen? They don't just go, you know, from an overnight thing where it's like, you know, we were in school, we found, you know, our co-founders, we put our heads down, we you know, grinded, and then all of a sudden, you know, Shark Tank came in the picture and we just blew up. I mean, you stopped kind of almost in your tracks. You didn't stop working on it, but you said, hey, we have to go and sustain for ourselves. We have to take some, you know, a step back just a little bit.
It's hard
Yeah.
though. It's hard.
It's
It's hard for
Yeah,
people to
it's
look
hard.
at a 28-year-old kid and say, "Oh, this kid got lucky and he founded a couple companies." But there's so much work that goes in between that.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, especially in the entrepreneurial world, you have to be so patient because you have to like understand that there's a game to play. And just like Simon Sinek says, like it doesn't matter. You have these kids that they want to get to the peak of the mountain. Like, it doesn't matter how fast you go up the mountain, but there's still a mountain there. There's still work to be done.
100%, yeah.
So I think for you, like, my one question that I had on my list that I have to ask is, like, you've had so many successes in a 10-year career, and so much to be proud of. Like, what would you say you're most proud of? What is the thing from your 10 years here that your successes that you're most proud of?
I mean, so for me, it's kind of more the relationships I've built, right? I mean, work is what made me meet Casson. I mean, he's one of my best friends now.
Yeah.
And
And
he's
we're
my brother,
yeah,
yeah.
and Jordan.
Wait.
Yeah, we're building in there. Abby.
What?
New friends. And like going from that,
We
like,
love you,
I mean,
Abby.
that expands into anything. I mean, Sam right here, Chris behind him,
Yeah.
like at you, everyone.
We're all
I've met
tight-knit,
through
yeah.
everything that I've done with that and built friendships out of that. Joe, the people I work with at Gradifi, David, and all of them. It's just like we built this kind of like group, right? And like there's so much more to that than just work now. There's like it's almost like a little family, right? And we'll stick together. So like I think the relationships are super valuable for me. And like through I guess all of that, like there's been like I guess tougher times, and it's like there like you said, there's a lot of growth and there's a lot of way to get there. And like I was working pretty much 7 days a week, 16-hour days, and to get to that point. And after I left Vistaprint, I kind of dove into that. I mean, and that completely destroyed my life in
Right.
some ways.
That's what I want to touch on too, because you worked at Vistaprint, right?
Yeah.
But then you went head first into what this was, right?
Yeah.
And what was that like? Because not even at Vistaprint, you had people, you were managing people, right?
Yeah.
But at your own startup, you start, you know, having to hire people and have them believe in your vision and believe in your your ability to succeed. What was that like personally, being such a young founder, getting in there and having to take that responsibility?
Yeah, and I think that so I thought I had a different life path too, and like we can kind of, I guess, we'll go, like I left Vistaprint, I decided it was time to do something, and like I had been doing very well at Vistaprint, like there's no lie there, like it was a place I could have stayed and been fine for the rest of my life, between however they take care of their people, they do it. And like to start, the entire thing started off, and we can gloss through this part, but it started off pretty much, I thought I had a different path, and I lost an engagement to actually wanting to pursue myself, everything I was going to do, right? And so like with that came like a major life change when I moved to Philly, and also lost a person who was with me a lot at the time, and kind of went back to Philly and was like, I'm going to dive in to this, and this is going to have my all, right? And like
and personally too. It wasn't just professionally, it was more of a personal choice.
And so you went and did that, and you're saying like, okay, I'm going to put myself all into this, and like there's no possible way it could get harder than just like completely uprooting my life, leaving everything that was doing really well for me up there in Boston with like Vistaprint, solid job, stable, blah blah blah. I'm going to go do this because like I just want the freedom, and I'm going to do it. And so coming back here and going back there, and then Shark Tank hitting, all of that stuff happening, company starts to grow a ton, we hit 1 million users, there's a lot of stuff going on, we're raising money, all of this stuff, and it's like, well, what do we do, right? So it's I mean, even today, I guess I still consider myself a kid. 3 kids, like we don't know a ton of what we're doing. Like I have some sense of business and things now. Like we've learned a lot over the last 2 years.
Scared, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like, oh, yeah.
This is real now. This is my life.
Yeah.
And Chris,
like, what do we do?
Brayson's always really put together. Chris has got a lot of drive and a lot of, and like he's got a lot of sensibilities about him. I'm a super emotional person, so like I freak the hell out every time something happens.
Are
and
you
I
a
was
Cancer?
I'm a Taurus, which is
Okay.
really strange.
Oh, gotcha. There you go.
Yeah, heart on my sleeve. And so like, so we went into that and we started hiring people, and we started meeting people that were somewhere in the industries that we were around, and saying like, hey, like come work for us, come help us grow this, like we need help. We realized that. We hired a COO and a CMO, and I've become really great friends with them, and I trust them with a lot of things, even though we've parted ways. At the time, I think I didn't really understand the full gravity of what it was like to do that, and kind of go from like being a solo set of founders who really, like, to be honest, at that time I felt I had nothing to lose, right? Even if I did, it was more of like, whatever, we'll figure it out. Like I'm young, like we'll survive. And like I think that you don't always have that luxury, like to bringing people in and then being like, oh shit, like it's not like, oh,
it's not just you.
Yeah, I have no. It's not that I have nothing to lose. It's like if I lose, they lose too. And while they might be able to find something else, they're taking a bet on me, and they're like looking at me to provide, and they have kids and they have a wife and they have a house, and like holy shit. And I think a lot of that put a lot of pressure on me, and I went through pretty dark times at the point. I kind of lost my way a little bit, definitely. I mean, and a lot of founders deal with this, is kind of that depression and that isolation of like putting a lot of pressure on yourself to perform so that you don't let those people down, right? And whether they think that like, and a lot of times actually the issue there, and I guess it's a lesson learned, is that a lot of times founders don't even ask the people that they're worried about if it's a problem, right? Be like, hey, like, are you really worried about this? Or are you doing this because like you have the ability to? Sometimes they already have their money, or like sometimes it's a calculated risk that they decided themselves, right? And like they're going to do it, and they had some time, or maybe they had like that time for a sabbatical in their life before they reinvent themselves, or who knows, right? Like, and I found out much later on, it was like, yeah, no, like we would have figured it out. Like it was cool. We like believed in the idea and believed in you guys, but like we had no expectation this might last forever. Like there was no guarantees that anyone made us, right?
And that gives
like,
you the relief, right?
Yeah,
that you need to keep driving.
And I still didn't realize that even when I got through it. It's like I got to such a point where it was just like kind of making it hard for me to do what I did, right? And I was just like, I need to think through this, and I kind of did a little soul searching and figured out that like, okay, like people have to be taking calculated bets. They're smart people. I want to work with them. So that means that if we get along and we have a culture fit, that they're the same people. They took a calculated risk. They thought about this. They aren't stupid, right? Yeah. They aren't just like blindly following faith-wise. And I didn't try and sell them on that, like Jim Jones in them or something. Right. But like, yeah. So like once I got through that, it was kind of where I was like, this is, like once you realize that like you just need to believe in yourself and you need to convince other people through the work you do to believe in you, then like as long as you follow that path and stay that course, that like it'll work out, right? And everyone's going to be fine as long as you're honest, open, and you're like building that belief system and proving that you can do what you say you're going to do, right?
Yeah.
And then they also won't be disappointed if it doesn't work out, right? Because they're like there and they're believing in you, and like you're trying your best, and they know that you're not phoning it in. And so I kind of use that as like, I guess, the motivation to be like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to be involved in this stuff. I want to find people with their vision. I want to be part of that kind of as long as I can be, or as long as it's feasible in my lifetime.
Right.
It kind of brings that through to that.
Yeah. So I think, go ahead, Abs.
No, it just seems like that realization, that mindset shift, going from student entrepreneur, doing your own thing, doing it for yourself, just making it through to saying, I'm responsible for other people's lives.
Child to a man.
Yeah, exactly. Child.
To lighten it up.
This
but
is some
yeah.
Mulan shit
I
right
know.
now, you know? But getting there, you know, kind of really secured you on that entrepreneurial path.
I mean, but it rocked my world first. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like long and short of it. And I think a lot of people go through that, and maybe some people don't come out of it, or it scares them away from it. But like, I mean, you come out stronger if you can. And I mean, it's like not something I'd want to do again, but like I think it really kind of solidified how I kind of view life and kind of go about things.
I think that's the most important thing, that you wouldn't want to do it again. Because I think that entrepreneurship is very gilded, right? It's very covered in gold. It's dripping in gold. And sometimes what makes you a successful entrepreneur, what you went through, right, is actually not that pretty.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But it defines your vision and your drive, right?
Yeah, and you learned from it.
Yeah, and I think I came out of it, I mean, shout out to Elise, because like I came out of it with a stronger support system.
And you need that support system. You need people
Who's
around
Elise?
you.
It's my girlfriend.
girl.
Yeah, it's my
Oh
girl.
my
Yeah.
You come out and like through that, I met her during all of that, and like she didn't really care. Like she was like that. Like I was
You
in
need
that
that.
stage. She saw
Yeah.
me, and like kind of grew me out of that. And like that was the support system. And then I finally opened up to my parents, and they helped me through. Caston saw what I was going through, even though I tried to hide it from him for a long time. And was like, "Yo, dude,
Yeah.
like we do this. Like this is what's up." I mean, I think when we originally met, you were waiting tables, right? I think it
Yeah,
was like and you were like doing whatever you can do, and you
Boss
kind of
boy.
and you transferred that into like you had the people skills to go out and make business happen, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
and you went for
had
you just
someone
jumped
like
for
you
it too.
Who pushed me, but I gotta say, I remember the first sit down you and I ever had. It was in a cafe on Charles Street in Beacon Hill, Boston.
Yeah.
Right. And it was, we were talking about whatever ideas that we all had at the time. And Scholly had not yet been on Shark Tank yet. And, it's just interesting to see, the steps and the processes of how, that has all transpired. I mean, I saw you as, someone who was smart, that knew exactly, what they wanted to do, but had not done it yet, to all of a sudden, I see Nick and I see my Facebook, and it's just fluttered with, Forbes, TechCrunch, every press outlet that you can think of, just talking about your company, when we were just sitting in a small cafe talking about it, months prior. So, and then to see the steps kind of like after that success to where that responsibility that dropped on your head to where you are now, where you're like, I've done it. I've been there. It was a crazy ride. Mm-hmm. I'm ready to do it again because I know what I'm doing, but I'm not ready to relive those moments that I had to run through.
When you bring that stuff up, it's actually funny because in the moment, and even now, I guess I glaze past all of those things that ever happened because you're so in it, right? Like I was like, oh shit, I was into TechCrunch, but
Abby and I talked about this, and we're like, you don't even know you're stepping outside your comfort zone until like 6 months later, and you're like, oh, I can't believe I had
I can't believe I did that.
Yeah, or that like there was recognition and things like that, because like you kind of get lost in it, and like I mean, I shared links all the time just to share the links, not because I was like sitting and basking in it. I think it took a while to even look back at it that way. And so like with that, it's like I was around Scholly for 6 more months after that, in a direct capacity, and then I kind of decided it was time for me to kind of go do my other thing. And I think we talked about it earlier before we started, like core values. And I think a lot of like what drove me and was super passionate about in Scholly and got me this far and got me through everything is that I was like helping people be able to go to college and do better for themselves and have the opportunities to do what I was doing, right? And the kind of core takeaway from that is, for me, was like, in general, if you distill it down to its pure sense, and I guess I haven't really done too much else, it ends up being able to tie back into everything, is being like enabling people, like freeing people up to be able to do the things they want to do, and kind of enabling them to do them, right, or have the opportunity to. It's kind of like my North Star and what guides me, and it goes to everything from like helping non-technical co-founders do their thing, right? It's like enabling them and helping them better be able to do their thing, and with helping them get into college, this and that. And then I was offered the opportunity to help be part of the founding team of Gradifi up here in Boston. And I kind of dove right back into the entrepreneurial thing. And so Gradifi helps people pay off their student debt through their employers. They kind of...
Sammy!
First episode, folks. Bear with us.
And so Gradifi helps people pay off their college debt through their employers. It's like an employer benefit, kind of a retention thing for them, but also kind of eases the burden a little for the fresh graduates, right?
Yeah.
And I went through all of the stuff I went through to be able to do what I do, and maybe it wasn't the path I thought I was going to take, but it helped me get there, right? I mean, being in school gave me the ability to take out that extra loan to get that laptop, right? If I wasn't in school, I wouldn't have had that ability to find that money, right? And so like the whole thing is that these people actually go to school to go work for these companies. Like you don't just walk into PwC usually. Like you're going to school so that you can have aspirations to go work for IBM, right? And so like it's your life dream to go work for them, and it's a way for them to reward their employees for doing that, right?
I'm going to toss this back to Abby in a second, but first off, I think this goes for everyone. I can't thank you enough for being so raw and real with us. I think it's been, I thought, and this is what I love about the podcast stuff, is I thought I knew Nick coming into this, and you hear stories, and you hear the rawness of the voice, and hearing those stories really transparently, and it's awesome. But I think what Abby and I were just scribbling about over here is we're curious, what's next for Nick? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? And even further than that, what's the mark you want to leave?
Yeah, I mean, the mark for me, I always thought like it's like the heroes get remembered, legends never die thing, and like I wanted to be like known the world over, like Elon Musk. Like it was like some part in your entrepreneurship journey. I think everyone gets into that stage where like I have to do something where everyone remembers me. I think for me now, it's exactly what I was just talking about. Like if I died tomorrow, it would be okay, because my end goal is to make impact in people's lives, and like I don't care if they know that I did it. I just need to know that I helped someone, right? I think it took me a long time to get over the egotistical part of being an entrepreneur, where it was like and it happened a lot at Scholly, where there was so much going on, and Chris is the face, and he was right to be, right? I think it took me a long time to realize that like I shouldn't be upset that I'm not the face, because I'm still changing their lives by building it.
Yep.
Right. And like to get through that and get past that was like a big thing in my journey and my personal growth as a human. Right. It makes me better in relationships and everything else as well that I have with people. It's like it's not always about like exactly getting the credit. It's about knowing that you did your best to help other people. Right.
Awesome.
And so that's the end of it. That's like the end goal for me. And I think that like I can say I've been there. I think I can do a lot more, and I think I'm going to keep trying to, whether in large or small ways, keep doing that. And so like the things we're doing at Gradifi and moving into the college save up so they can help save up for their kids to go, and things we're doing with Scholly now where we're partnering to give school districts with like Chance the Rapper and other celebrities, things like that, to give Scholly away to kids who can't afford to pay for it monthly. Just trying to continue to grow that impact, and hopefully I'll run into something where I can do that again on the same scale or bigger, right?
Let's send it back to our beautiful host here, Abby.
No, I think that was the perfect way to end this first podcast.
Yeah,
I think
we
that
definitely have to have Nick back to.
No, I think you're gonna have to come back. I
love
think
it.
that really just being able to see the story arc of the raw experience, the highs and the really lows, like the low lows, and how that turns into a strong, passionate drive for what you're doing now. And I think that that's so so important. I'm like so excited right now. I'm like so emotional.
He's
because
ground
it's-
up, baby.
No, you're ground up, right? And it's not
The
even just
definition
ground
of
up,
ground up,
0 to
yeah.
100. It's ground
Real
up. Look
quick.
at all the stuff that I went through. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
So much.
No, seriously, this was amazing. Want to sign off from the Ground Up crew today. I think that this was a great
Do a good pound here,
idea of what our podcasts are going to be like in the future. So tune in.
And if you get to watch the video, if you don't get to watch the video, Abby's definitely wearing a Star Wars shirt.
Han Solo for the win.
Throw
Love
that
you
out there.
guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
All right, see you guys.